Lotu-Iiga.
Talofalava Malole Soifua, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. How will the budget help give New Zealand economic advantages over other countries which are being forced to increase income taxes and go deeply into debt?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, New Zealand has an opportunity to stand out from other countries in the next few years by having lower income taxes and bringing public debt under control. The budget tax package leaves the vast majority of New Zealanders better off. It tilts the economy towards savings and productive investment in exports and away from borrowing, housing speculation and excessive government spending that were the hallmarks of Labor's term in office. If we had followed their policies, we would not be able to stand out compared to other countries.
Peseta Lotu-Iiga.
Supplementary to the Honourable Minister. After the budget tax package, what will be the top marginal tax rate faced by New Zealanders on the average wage, and how does this compare with the marginal tax rates of average wage earners in other countries?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, from 1 October, excluding tax credits, someone on the average wage will pay a top marginal rate of 17.5%. In fact, 73% of all New Zealand income earners will face a top statutory tax rate of 17.5% or less. The average for the OECD on the average wage is 36%. The United Kingdom is 32%, and even Australia 26%. So by comparison, we have a much lower statutory tax rate on the average wage.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, what would have been the economic advantages to New Zealand had the former Labour government cut taxes to the extent that the then opposition National Party advocated prior to the global economic crisis, and had not instead paid net debt down to zero?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the problem with the former Labour government was it let spending out of control, and that made it difficult for that government to cut taxes.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, why does the Minister allege that the former Labour government let spending out of control when government expenditure as a proportion of GDP is forecast to rise under his administration to 33% of GDP?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, the member should consult the Labour spin doctors who are all trying to argue exactly the opposite. So he says our expenditure is going to rise as a proportion of GDP. Labour's general line contradicts him and says that it's going to drop because we're slashing and burning.
Point of order, the Honourable Annette King.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to correct a comment I made when I tabled the pledge. I said it was signed by all leaders.
Order, leavers sought to correct I presume it's to make a personal explanation. Leavers sought to make a personal explanation, isn't it?
Mr. Speaker,
I've got to put leave to the House. Is there any objection to leave being given? There is no objection.
Mr. Speaker, when I was tabling the pledge, I said it was signed by all party leaders. It wasn't signed by the leader of the ACT party, and I said it was signed by all leaders of the party. And I apologise to the leader of the ACT party. He's always stuck with what he believes in.
Peseta Lotu-Iiga.
Further supplementary, Mr. Speaker. How does the government's current gross debt level compare with those same countries you referred to earlier?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, when the government took office, in fact, we were facing forecasts of ever-growing debt, which situation was first outlined in Labour's last budget, where they showed a decade of deficits and rising debt. New Zealand's gross debt, as measured by OECD's internationally comparable data, is about 30% of GDP. Government gross debt in the United States is 90% of GDP, 80% in the United Kingdom. Australia, however, has gross government debt of 20%, so it's better than New Zealand because they didn't squander the last decade.
The Honourable Sir Roger Douglas.
Mr. Speaker, can the Minister explain to the House how the fact that New Zealand is going more deeply in debt, 23 billion or 133% over the last 2 years, and substantially increasing indirect taxation is somehow not a problem and better than other countries going more deeply in debt and increasing income tax?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the government has made some considered and balanced decisions about the extent to which it is willing to cut government spending in a recession. We could have cut spending considerably. That would have dealt with, to some extent, with the problems that the member is talking about. We decided to continue with government spending to underpin growth in the economy, protect people from the sharp edges of recession. But as we come out of recession, we do need significant fiscal constraint to prevent public debt rising too rapidly. Government is borrowing $240 million per week, every week for the next 3 years, to finance its deficits and refinance existing debt.
Peseta Lotu-Iiga.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. What economic forecast did the government inherit when it took office just 18 months ago?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, far from a golden economy, we actually inherited deeply worrying forecasts starting in the 2008 budget under the previous government, featuring sharply rising debt, a deepening recession and billions of dollars of unfunded government spending commitments. In Budget 2009 we got on top of these difficult circumstances, but now we need to make further progress as we have done in the 2010 budget.
Question number 3, the Honourable